going to start the roundtable session, and the title of the roundtable is the role of technology in building bridges between informal and formal language education. We have a team brief, Jorge Arús, and Lourdes Pomposo, and myself, team obtained an honorary degree in computer science from the University of the West of England and a PhD in cognitive science from the University of Birmingham. He's currently a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Languages and Systems at the UNED. And since arriving at UNED, he has researched on various topics related to the development of tools and systems for collaborative and individual distance learning, specifically those related to second language learning. For the past few years, his research interests have centered on two aspects of the design of second language systems for distance education: the application of user modeling techniques for artificial intelligence, and the design of development of second language learning systems that incorporate the results of advances in cognitive, neuropsychological, and psycholinguistic research on the nature of language acquisition, learning, and memory, in order to facilitate and consolidate language learning. Jorge Arús he has got a PhD in English linguistics and has been teaching English language and linguistics at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid since 1997. His publications include articles on corpus-based typological description, constructive linguistics, and EFL teaching, mostly from the systemic functional linguistics perspective, in various national and international journals and edited volumes. He has been copy editor of the English Studies journal Atlantis and is currently the coordinator of blended learning at the School of Philology at the US UCM. Among his most recent publications within the SFL framework, he is co-author with Julia David and Juan Rafael Zamorano of Systemic Functional Grammar of Spanish, Contrastive Study with English, which was published in 2010. Lourdes Pomposo is a graduate in English Philology from the Universidad de La Laguna and has been teaching English since then. She has obtained certificates from the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford's examination boards, as well as the Chamber of Commerce of London. Her teaching career has involved teaching in schools where she has been head of departments, universities, and in companies. She is now a teacher of business English for tourism and translation at the Universidad Complutense and UNED. She has run her own in-company language teaching academy in Madrid for 8 years. So, very welcome to you all. As we are going to talk about technology, we know that technology is in permanent evolution and education is benefiting from the great number of options available. Classrooms make use of some kind of technology, from tablets or computers to projectors, as we can see. And mobiles are actually getting as well into the picture, as we have seen in some presentations that we had these couple of days. In the specific case of second language learning, these technologies can compensate for the hours of tuition and study necessary to progress from one level to the next. As we know, we don't ever have enough to actually make the levels of the students go up. So in that sense, technologies can help a great deal. So innovations have had a profound effect on learning needs and styles. And it is now possible to it is not possible now to confine education to a time and a place. It can be ubiquitous, and students can choose their place of learning and the time when they want to do it. So ICTs are being used to enhance both face-to-face and distance learning within the different levels of formal education, mainly entailing autonomous and collaborative teaching and learning. So in that scenario, we are going to start with some questions, and I hope you want to answer your own later on. So, Tim, what do you think? What would you say is the difference between formal and informal education, which is the subject of this roundtable?
It's actually, I think, a harder question to answer now than it was a few years ago, because I think a few years ago I probably would have answered that it's any kind of learning undertaken under the auspices of a recognised educational institution like a university, but I think that's obviously clearly not the case anymore. So perhaps we should try and think about it in terms of control of the process, the educational process, the quality and the methodology, because I think it's, as well as that, it's got a lot to do with where we actually undertake the learning. in the sense that do we actually go along to a building and sit down in a class and listen to people, or do we connect to an LMS, an online system which is controlled by the university, which I think is more formal in that sense, or is it more informal in the sense that it's something I can do where I am? And I think that's something that we can see is changing. I mean, fortunately the days are beginning to have gone past where we have to connect onto our university portal. From the portal we connect to the LMS, from the LMS we connect to the course, from the course we jump down to the subject, etc., etc. We eventually go into the forum to find that. Our teacher hasn't actually answered the question that we left there a couple of days ago. And now when we're moving around on different forums, different social networks, so it's something that we're doing as we're going along. More in the flavour of this connectionist learning paradigm.
Thank you. Jorge, would you say the main challenge for the integration of learning into formal education is more pedagogical or technological?
Well, I'd say it's both, really, because when we speak of mobile learning and we speak of mobile devices, it's true that the first thing we think about is issues like visibility, layout, and aspects like this, and we think, well, maybe the technological aspect is the main component of mobile learning, or in particular of mobile devices. But the thing is that, in my opinion, what mobile learning users ultimately want is to use something which is useful. So they are using it to learn a foreign language. If the mobile device is technically impeccable, but the application, the mobile application or whatever program they're working on is not effective, that's of no use, and students will grow tired of it and not use it. So I think it's a combination of sound technical features and strong methodological basis for whatever the program is that they are running or they are working on. Now, I think the key issue here is probably maybe some of the people in the audience have worked on this to obtain feedback from the students on this respect, right? When we give them mobile apps, or when we give them any kind of online program that can be run on a mobile device, like a tablet or smartphone, we should then, if we are doing it in the context of formal education, also in informal education, but I think we are mostly interested now in this roundtable on formal education, we should always obtain feedback from their experience with the use of that application or the use of that program, and we should obtain feedback on both aspects, on the technological aspect and on the technical aspects and the pedagogical aspects, and then based on that feedback try to improve the application or the program accordingly. And we'll see. We'll probably talk later about these things a bit more, where we see that sometimes we have surprises. We think that, because the first thing we think of typically is, well, with mobile devices, technological issues or technical issues are going to be the most important, because of the visibility, they don't see things well on the screen, etc. But when you ask students, sometimes you are surprised that what they mostly miss is things related with the quality of the program they're using.
And Lourdes, because you've got experience in the business environment, do you think there is a difference between the use of technologies in informal education, in a business environment and a university?
Yes.
Because you have experience in both.
Yes, there is. Well, I'm not going to tell you my personal life, but just to tell you a little bit about my professional background, because I've been about 28 years a teacher of English, and this is my passion, this is what I like. But I was teaching in a private university, and suddenly English was not important because students had to study very hard. So we were unemployed. and I decided to start my own company. So I had the advantage, I don't know if it's an advantage or it's a disadvantage, to compare university environment and company environment, at least in Spain. So what I found was surprising, because the use of technologies in university for learning purposes is very common. So our students use WebCity, they use Moodle, in UNED we have our own platform, and they are used to using it for learning. But when they arrive to the professional environment, they find that they are not using new technologies for learning. It's just for business purposes. They have tablets, they have computers, they have mobile phones, and not for learning. So it's a contradiction, really, because they have no time for face-to-face classes for learning English, because they have 3 slots. Normally, when I visited the company, they have 3 slots. The first slot for having a teacher in company teaching them is first time in the morning. They are sleepy. So this is a good excuse. No, I'm very sleepy, I don't want to go to class face-to-face the first time in the morning. The second slot is lunchtime. If the class is before lunch, they are hungry. If it's after lunch, they are sleepy. And another slot could be a possibility when they finish work, so 6, 7, or later, okay? They want to go home, or they are tired. So when are they going to have an English class face-to-face with the teacher there and sleepy or hungry? Okay, so it could be a perfect idea to have mobile learning, blended learning, but they are sort of afraid of using new technologies. So it's a bit disappointing when they say, no, we want face-to-face. They don't trust in new technology for learning. I don't know why. Probably because we are not offering them challenging things, so effective new technologies for learning, or companies don't want to invest money in using these new technologies. So this is a comparison I can offer you, because I have been in both environments. Okay.
So, because you have what
It's very pessimistic.
well, realistic, probably. As you have had some experience with the use of mobile technology in informal education, what would you tell us about that? What can you say? Is it more hopeful?
Yes, I made a little experiment in with one of my courses. I teach at as Pilar said before, I teach at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and I do a good deal of English as a foreign language teaching. And in one of the courses, we tested. It's not really a mobile app. It's more an online course that can be run on mobile devices, as everything mobile can be run on mobile. Everything online can be run on mobile devices, but not everything can be run properly because of visibility issues, etc. No? And so we took. It was a class with around 35 students, and they had to work on this online. It's not a whole course. It's more like a module. It's a listening comprehension sort of activity with several tasks, and it was called Eating Out, where they had to. They had to listen to they had to do a listening comprehension activity where they listened to a situation, then they answered some comprehension questions. Then they were exposed. Then they were how they worked. They had to deal. They were exposed to the lessons vocabulary. They worked with the vocabulary, and then they did some activities with that vocabulary. The same with grammar. They went through a little grammar explanation, and then some grammar activities, all contextualized based. So the main idea was that We were testing what in principle was or tried to be a pedagogically sound teaching module. So in this respect, I think we were more or less in the line of what our plenary speaker yesterday said about technology not having to come first, but first we need a plan and then see how technology can help us achieve that goal, right? So we try to decide that, for instance, in some tests that we had run previously with, for instance, mobile applications, we saw that very often one of the elements that was at the fault or that scored the lowest had to do with pedagogy itself, and in terms of a contextualization of activities, having a sound theoretical background, etc. So here in this course, in this module, we used systemic functional linguistics as the theoretical background for the explanation of the grammar of that list that they were exposed to in the listening comprehension. In the situation, the participants had to deal with ordering food. So there was, it was a situation that we created ourselves, the script, and we included a lot of verbs having to do with liking, disliking, preferring, etc. So then, in the grammar explanation, they were exposed to what in systemic functional linguistics is called mental transitivity, that deals with liking, disliking, etc. And then, after that, after practicing with that, they moved on to a final practice that was a bit more open-ended, as open-ended as you can have it when having activities that are self-corrected by the machine, of course. Now the thing there, so what was the test about, no? I had some students, I asked students to work on this module for sort of extra credits during the term. I told them, like, we were already 2 or 3 weeks advanced the term, but then I told them, you can work on this, I just want to see that you have completed the activity. For this particular test, I wasn't grading them according to perform. Well, they were graded, but the thing is that I had left all activities open in such a way that they could repeat them as many times as they wanted for them to obtain the best grade. So the idea was that it was up to them to obtain the best grade, repeating, etc. And then I gave them they had the choice to do it on a PC or on a mobile device. One of the first result was immediate, was how many people would choose to use a mobile device. Most of them were reluctant to use a mobile device. So in principle, now when I discussed this with colleagues, they told me, bad results. And I said, no, they're not bad. I mean, to my research, results are never bad. They are results, and you interpret them. Okay? And then, so there were 35 students, I think in the end, I don't know if it was 6 or 7 doing it on a mobile device, and the rest working on a laptop. And then when they finished, at the end of the term, when they had finished, they had completed the Eating Out, that was the name of the program, I ran a questionnaire asking them a number of technical and pedagogical issues based on some rubrics we had previously developed. And well, the results in global terms, we obtained that they were quite satisfied with both technically and pedagogically, but I was mostly interested in comparing the ones working with mobile devices with the ones working on laptops. And my hypothesis was that probably those working on mobile devices would experiment more technological dissatisfaction than the other ones because of visibility issues, etc. But to my, I don't know, not to my amazement, but I was a bit surprised that technical issues were not a problem, either for laptop users or for mobile device users. And also the degree of satisfaction with methodological issues were similar for for PC users and for mobile device users, which has led me to think that if you have a sound, a program, an application, whatever you're using, that has been carefully designed from a methodological perspective, that's going to make everything easier, even the technological aspects. I mean, if there's a very clear technological problem, that's gonna take its toll. But the perception of the students in their experience when when working with that application is going to be general overall, because they are pleased with the whole thing. And so if you have a sound methodology, then it can be used for e-learning or for mobile learning.
And from the business perspective, Lourdes, would you say that, as you said, that we have got this problem about the slots where they can place the classes and everything, do you think the companies are worried about the learning languages, and are they covering the needs of the workers? And Jorge was offering some information about his experience. Do you think that would work? Technological innovations would work?
I think they're not covering the needs.
Okay.
They're not covering the needs. We did, this group, Outline, the group who is organizing this conference, we did a research last year, chance to see we did a needs analysis study in companies of around 10 different sectors, and it was a questionnaire. The companies were of more than 250 employees, and we wanted to know if they were learning languages. English is the language they're learning, most of the companies, and if they were using technology for learning. And it was curious because the 93% of the company give mobile phones to the staff, but only, and you can get your own conclusions, the 1% of these people use new technologies for learning. Okay, so this, I don't know why, probably because of what we were saying before, they are afraid or we're not offering a good new technologies or effective for learning. So I don't want you to get more with percentages, but I want to tell you, so you can get your own conclusions. So why is there 93% of people using technologies, tablets, smartphones, Blackberries, and they're not using it for learning languages? Why do they prefer face-to-face teaching and learning? Because we asked them, about the 60% of the people interviewed prefer face-to-face learning for a second language, the 30% prefer blended learning, and just 11% e-learning, complete e-learning. We don't know why. So companies are trying to give facility for them, but as I told you before, probably with these kinds of crises, they don't want to invest money in buying new technologies or programs or apps for learning. But they are interested in it. So we have a big challenge here because they want to learn, they want to try mobile phones for learning. So they want to, the difficult thing is they want to improve listening. Probably this is easier to find programs for improving listening, but speaking for improving speaking skills is a bit more difficult to offer apps with voice recognition and with a good line to listen that it works. But well, we have a big challenge here. We can wait.
Yes. Do you think the future is mobile in that case?
I think more than the mobile, I think the future is actually ubiquitous. I think mobile is a step on the way to that end, and the idea of being able to access what we need, information and resources from when we want it, which is far from the case at the moment, because even if we have the technology and the infrastructure, like for one, I'm never able to actually get to the end of the month and still have some some credit left on my network access. So that's a bit of a problem. The other thing is whether it's actually appropriate and useful, because, for example, in Gavin's talk, when we had the Google postcard, I mean, those were the good old days as far as I'm concerned, because I remember going to the library and requesting an article, having to fill out the index card, and you'd have to wait for 2 or 3 weeks before the article came through, which actually enabled me to watch snooker on the television for 2 days without feeling guilty. But I mean, and now your time is never your own. And I'm being serious from a student's point of view. I mean, the example that Gavin also gave about being under this complete avalanche of information you're trying to handle, I mean, it is a big problem. I mean, amongst the many things I have to teach to make a living, I teach programming. And when I'm teaching, it's very common to see the students having 20, or I don't know if you're aware, it's a Spanish social network, which is, as far as I'm concerned, they're using to get off with people, not for any other purpose. And I don't mind that, but I make it clear, because what always happens is they start probing, they're listening, they're doing the exercises, and after a while the conversation with their friend is more entertaining than what I'm trying to get them to do. So that's when I have to sort of just say to them, hang on a second, you might be a real superhero that you can actually multitask and do this well, but be careful, because I have no intention of saying things more than once in this class. And I think it is dangerous. I think it's a set of skills. I think it's very useful. There's lots of very positive things about it. And for example, making use of all the downtime. I mean, I often say to people, I've got 2 jobs. I'm a university lecturer and I'm a taxi driver, because I take my children from one place to the other, which means I have a lot of downtime where I'm sat in the car waiting, or I'm trying to take them from one place to the other. And actually having access to that device, be able to pop on to interact with somebody or get some update information. And I also would say we have to be a little careful, because I mean, we're also moving towards wearable technology, etc. And we have to be careful that we're not trying to use a hammer as the only tool we have. And the size of the device we have, the screen, and I have to buy a larger and larger mobile every time I update, because my site's getting worse and worse. But just some tasks are not appropriate on that kind of technology. So I think it's another tool in the bag of an effective language teacher and student, but it's one that, like everything in life, we need to learn balance and learn how to use it, because I think it's good. The other thing I think it is incredibly valuable for actually languages is just the shortening of distances, the way it lets us have access to people. I mean, I never listen to the radio anymore, and very seldomly have the television on. Why? Because I can stream it to my device. I mean, if I have to be in the kitchen for 20 minutes and there's a test match on, well, I can connect to that and listen to it. If I'm trying to train a language, then I can connect to the news service and be listening to that language. So it really is a wonderful resource in that sense. So, I think it is. And to give a purely numerical answer to that, because it's not just a subjective opinion, there's a guy called Benedict Evans, and I don't know if anybody's actually seen his the presentation he's got online saying the future is mobile. It's something he put online a couple of years ago, and I think within a period of about 2 weeks it went viral. There was something like 400,000 access, and it's frightening, the data, because for decades we've been kicking Microsoft and criticising them for one thing or the other. And he had this wonderful slide which just says Microsoft is irrelevant, because we're just immersed in this amount of data. And I think the other day Facebook said that somewhere in the region of 80% of their access is from mobile technology. So I think as technologists and language researchers, we can do a lot of things with it, but we certainly can't ignore it.
Thank you. And through this, companies, do you think they're committed to using technologies for learning, and what sort of technologies do they use? They use mobiles or
they are studying the possibilities of offering apps and paying for apps to the employees. But, well, I'm going to tell you another anecdote. When we wanted to be innovative, so we offer the companies a new tool, very easy to use, because they said that they were very bad at listening. Okay, you know that in Spain, I don't know in other countries, but our level of English is not very good in general. Okay, especially in business settings is even worse than you expect. And so we offered a very easy to use tool that it was done for practice and listening, so it was very cheap. It was, they had to pay 12 euros every 3 months, so I think very cheap. And it was, they had to listen to a video. It was a multiple choice exercise and they had to answer. It was tough for practicing different levels and business English and English for law and general English, only 15 minutes a day. So I was, I don't know, in that day I was very optimistic. I said, well, many people are going to use it, many people are going to improve, many people are going to use it, especially because it's very cheap and very easy to use. In 2 years, there were only 2 companies that use it, and in each company there were 5 people using it. So it was really depressing, okay? So companies are planning, are in touch now with other companies that offer blended learning, okay? So teacher face-to-face and online courses, but not as much as we would like.
Not very optimistic again.
Now, I'm very optimistic in my life.
Not that
In general, and that's what they.
So do you think informal learning is the same as mobile learning?
Mobile social.
Yes.
I think I would be inclined to answer another question, which would be, are the activities we typically do on our mobile learning part, on our mobile devices, part of our overall learning and not just part of our overall living, perhaps? Because I think there's definitely a blurring between the distinction of when we're learning and what we're not learning, because I find that a great majority of the things I'm actually doing on my mobile device that I'm learning. It may not be necessarily something to do with a particular learning goal I've got at this moment, a particular language or some new technology or some new methodology. It might be to do with absolutely anything. I mean, you're looking around on, if you're on Pinterest, for example, you suddenly find someone's got a new board up with some very interesting summaries about ways to fix a washing machine, for example. So I even start off with the intention of learning about that, but I find them actually doing it. I think what we're beginning to see is a blurring between what is our intentional learning, if you like, and our just general learning, and whether it's actually informal, it obviously is in that sense, and it's social to the extent that we want it to, because if we find the information we want, we're happy about it. But also you have to be careful. The classic quote is that you should go to a doctor and never try and use online websites to undertake self-diagnosis, because we all have a bit of a tendency in that direction, and we can end up thinking we're going to die the next day. And even in less critical areas, I mean, the social contact, if you like, with other people on there can be really wonderful for us to be able to advance in our knowledge. And well, they always say the best way to teach is, the best way to learn is to teach, and quite often explaining it to somebody else actually reinforces our understanding and competencies, because you kind of think you've got it clear. It's not until you actually articulate it that you find out you have or you haven't. I don't think that's something that's necessarily new. I mean, like 20 years ago when we were using the network news groups, I mean, we were doing these sorts of things, but it wasn't viral in that sense. It was just a small few who actually had access to these sorts of tools, and now it's not the case. And I think you can find lots and lots of examples of this happening online, and it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, there's classic cases of blogs that have been put together, for example, where, I don't know, American housewives, for example, are living in small towns miles away from anywhere, and they're able just by talking about their daily experience of getting their families up and out to school and meeting their daily problems, they are seriously helping a lot of people. So is that teaching or learning or what? And I think it's valuable. It's blurring the distinction, which is excellent, and also it's forcing educational institutions to reflect upon our kind of mission. Will the students still be interested in paying our fees to come and study with us? I mean, is it just because they want some kind of prestigious certificate? And that looks like it's got its day's numbers as well, because if the employers are beginning to move away from looking at paper certificates to actually seriously considering whether we've actually got these competencies or not, and that puts that whole value chain in question. And I think even with some of the more tenuous certificates that one can obtain online nowadays, it's not a question of having a particular certificate will help you to get a job, for example. What it will give you is the interview. And it's in the interview the employer, the potential employer, will actually be able to determine whether you can speak English sufficiently well or not.
And Jorge, Do you think, from your experience, that M-learning will be important in the evolution of MOOCs?
Well, I don't see how it can't be. I mean,
Okay.
Learning, in my opinion, will be an important part of MOOCs, because MOOCs happen online, even if MOOCs are not online courses, but they happen online. And things happening online in terms of teaching, there is a tendency for the users of these courses, students of these courses, to, I mean, this is the other issue. Like, one thing is, will it go mobile, or and the other question would be, will it go mobile and students will want to use that mobile component? I say yes. In my opinion, it will go mobile and it will be successfully mobile. But again, I think the important thing is finding, I mean, if a MOOC in itself, the way it is right now, because I would say that right now MOOCs are used, I don't have data here, but I suppose that MOOCs are thought of mostly for PC use, okay? Although I'm sure many people are already using their mobile devices for that. But if the MOOC is successful, and yesterday in one of the workshops we spoke about reasons for MOOCs being successful or not being successful, you just need a little adaptation to the specific technology of mobile devices to make sure that if you have forums, if you have different kinds of activities, that they can be easily run on a mobile device in terms of visibility, etc. But if the MOOC is methodologically successful, I don't see how it wouldn't be popular on mobile devices. And also at the same time, I think that there might be things that can be more applicable to be run on mobile devices than others. For instance, you know that in some on some MOOCs where you have all these social interaction components where the different students vote the other students' interventions, questions, etc., and they bring good karma, bad karma, etc. Those things are very similar to what we are doing with some social network programs online, and that's what people, mostly young people, are doing all the time with Facebook, liking, disliking, etc. So that particular component of MOOCs, I think, I'm sure they're already doing it on mobiles.
Okay. And Tim, do you think MOOCs are an important step towards some democratization of learning? So do you think this will affect informal learning?
Yes and no. I'll give more information. Yes and no. I think it was many people have talked about it, but I think it was Sir John Daniels, who from the Commonwealth of Learning, said around about 2025 there'll be somewhere in the region of about 100 million new students in the world, and the majority of them won't have access to high quality Ivy League type universities. And actually meeting that demand requires the construction of one new university campus every fortnight for 15 years, completely unviable. So therefore, one could argue that MOOCs and the continuation of MOOCs, because it's not the end of the question by any means, once again it's just a step on the path, could actually meet that demand. Unfortunately, we have to be slightly realistic, and that 99% of MOOCs aren't MOOCs because they're not open. I think it was Joseph yesterday that actually said this in his talk, that I mean, they're open in the sense that you can access them. Okay, great. But I can't download, rewrite, remix, and reshare the information. I mean, the content is actually completely copyrighted, so it heavily hamstrings my attempts to actually work with that material. I think if we come back to our context, European context and the States, then I don't think that MOOCs are particularly aimed at undertaking that. I mean, this is more about publicity and basically providing with students with a low commitment path towards actually coming towards our main paid products. And without actually putting a name on the university, I was talking to a friend who actually runs this program at a UK university. It's not UGF, it's not Edinburgh, it's okay, I'm not talking about it. Somebody else, another university, he basically had data, they'd done the learning analytics on their site, and they showed that 10% of the people who'd actually engaged with their MOOCs and their open content within a period of 10 days had actually gone through and paid for formal learning. So it does have a role to play. And I think the thing is, if we talk about MOOCs in the context of the hype curve, that maybe towards the end of last year, perhaps earlier, we thought they were going to be the great panacea for the future of learning, and I think we've got over that now. I think we're a lot more realistic, there's a lot can be learned, and once again I think it's coming back to some of the points I mentioned before, that the role of the teacher and the relationship between the students and the teachers are changing, and that will have an important kick-on effect to the way that I think the teaching and learning is actually undertaken.
So I think it's quite clear that we have to think first about how to design a course, and then of the technology that can be applied to it. But the fundamental thing is the framework where the course is set up. I think we all agree on that. And we would like, if you want to ask any questions to the panel, to the roundtable, yes, please.
The CEO of Udacity, one of the biggest MOOC platforms, recently said that they've discovered the secret to a successful MOOC, and the secret apparently is very small groups and tutors.
Yeah.
What does that bode for the future of MOOCs, I wonder?
To be perfectly honest with you, I think he said a lot of things. I think he's saying it because he's not making any money out of them. He's getting more and more frustrated. And previously he said he was not going to take part in the MOOC market anymore. I mean, that kind of working in small groups, if you like, in a more or less face-to-face study. You can see it on other platforms, I mean, Coursera and another platform whose name escapes me at the moment, are talking about these meeting episodes and working together. I think that's important. I mean, that's something that I'm from UNED, and it's a distance university, but we've got more than 60 regional educational centres, because I would say that people are, we're social animals and we like to get together. And personally, when I did my degree a millennia away, I would say I learned more in the coffee room afterwards, drinking coffee, talking to my colleagues, than I actually did during the class. What the hell was he talking about? Somebody explains it to you. Okay. So I think it's good. But I think the term MOOC will begin to go out of fashion. Okay, I mean, the early adopters went down that path, it was looking good. Now what's happening? We're now in the Horizon 2020, Erasmus Plus cycle, and I mean, a lot of the people I know are putting project proposals together, are putting MOOCs in there. I mean, it's I really would not like to be a member of the evaluation committee or in the commission at the moment, having to go through all these project proposals. So what will happen? A couple of years down the road, it'll be a no-no. In the same way as we used to talk about, CSCW or something, you can't talk about intelligent tutors anymore because that's out of fashion. We won't be able to talk about MOOCs. But that doesn't mean that for me, what is the essence of MOOCs, which are more CMOOCs than XMOOCs, won't be there in some other form. We'll still be mulling over these sorts of phenomena and learning technologies. But we'll just be calling them something else so we can get more research from it.
Well, I believe that the future of MOOCs is fairly clear already. First of all, they are not going to be free anymore, because actually the signature track is the first step. You want a reliable certificate, you pay for it. That's the first part. And the second part is that probably MOOCs, since they do not work really for huge amounts of students at the same time, 60,000 students, 200,000 students, that wouldn't work. So I believe, and I see that's the tendency, that they will work as an internal, in-house refreshment or instruction courses for the companies. Sorry about you, leaders.
I think that's some...
Because imagine, because there are 2 points. First of all, once you pay for it, that's done. Second, if you organize a course for your employees, they are supposed to take it in their working time. Therefore, they are not working for you. They are being structurally informed. If you make them take a MOOC, they are supposed to do it at home, in their free time. So there are all advantages, and there's no drawbacks. And so I'm afraid that the MOOCs will be MOOCs, they will be paid for, and they will become much, much smaller.
Just a quick answer, and I'll let somebody else jump in. I mean, MOOCs have never been free, but they've just been free to the students. I mean, somebody's got to pay. Somebody's got to pay the.
Extremely expensive, over $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, keeping that infrastructure going, the server, which is with hundreds of thousands of students connected, maybe up to 5,000 people working in parallel. That technological infrastructure is not cheap. I mean, if you want to put curators and facilitators online, you have to pay them. So there's always been money there, and quite a lot of these companies aren't making any money. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Coursera just managed to get another, I don't know how many millions of dollars from corporate funding when they are not making any money at the moment. They're losing, they're bleeding money, and yet they're still able to go on. I mean, incredible. And I think they are definitely being used for corporate training. I was in a think tank meeting the other day with a major international company there, and they're definitely using it. So.
I'm puzzled. I'm puzzled by a lot of what's being said here, and I think it may have to do with what you consider the aims of a MOOC. I'm somebody, I'm a person, I am interested in something and I want to learn about this, and I sign up for a MOOC. I know that about 90% of the people who sign up with me won't complete the course, and that doesn't bother me in the slightest. So I sign up for a MOOC and I do it, and at the end of it, I'm quite happy that I've learned something. So where's the problem? You're talking about, they're bleeding money. I don't care. I'm the one who's and you're also talking about people, the progression from doing a MOOC to signing up to a university course or a course from the provider. Again, is that what you're saying, that MOOCs should be promotional tools for other courses? I think there's a lot of issues about what the concept of a MOOC is for the institution and for the learner, and they're completely different. And so how we evaluate them needs to take into account both sides. And you mentioned the openness, and so Joseph, yesterday, most things that call themselves open are open as to who can access them, not necessarily for remixing, etc. That doesn't make them any less useful to the user, to 99% of the users who will not want to remix them, reuse them, they just want access and to engage with the content. So I think, I have trouble kind of putting together the picture here of, why is the MOOC supposedly dying, or it's a model that won't last? It's a model that is of many people. I'd say the future of the MOOC is in getting employers to accept MOOCs as some sort of training, informal training for the most part. But if I have completed the MOOC and I have actually engaged, etc., if I get my little badge that says I've done it, what I need is for someone to tell me, actually that is valid. You have done a little bit of training on this, and then MOOCs will really flourish. I think it's about the employers accepting them rather than anything else. But I throw that all back to you.
May I answer? Because the answer...
By all means. This is what you call democratization.
It's ROI, return on investment. That's the answer. Return on investment. You cannot afford to maintain MOOCs the way they are. There is no return on investment. You just mentioned
Someone has to pay for
bleeding
them.
money.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
There's a chap at the back, and then Jeff wanted to answer.
Okay, so I wanted to reply you when you said that employers should recognize this title. So I am an employer because I have 6 employees, and I do recognize it. So, and I think like me,
Right.
but I'm also an engineer, so my mind is more in software side. But as me, many people, I think they are starting. What I care is actually what you know, not what the title you actually have. Because we all know.
Absolutely.
I have 2 degrees in university, and we all know that there is people in university that years, he stays there or she for years, and then they get the title at the end. And they don't have to be the best professionals ever. So same goes to the other side. So there are people that cheat in the books, of course, but there is a lot of people that actually learn a lot thanks to the books. And it's happening especially in India and these poor countries where people don't have access to high level education. So they are using books for that, and they are getting great professionals thanks to the books. So
They are really.
Yeah, I was interested in some. I'm going to go back to language learning. I'm going to try to stay out of MOOCs, although actually there are some interesting lessons in MOOCs, and I'll bring it in later. But I was interested in the things that you were talking about, and some of them were about trying to build automated ways of learning languages. In other words, you're sitting on your phone and you have this app. And it is something that you try that drill and practice, or sophisticated forms of drill and practice. But I was interested in that space that you weren't talking about what I would call the intelligent tutor. In other words, the application of adaptive learning, the application of sort of AI algorithms to enable it to tailor it to your learning. And so my experience of the drill and practice things, the automated routine rote things, is actually they're incredibly boring, and so therefore you know they are not attractive to you as a learner, and you understand therefore why you would want to go to a class, because you get intelligent people. So this is a huge gap between what can be done technologically and what can be done in the classroom. So my question really is, do you see a sense of that being bridged? So that was the question. I wanted to make a comment about the MOOC thing. One of the things that MOOCs have very clearly demonstrated is the power of crowdsourcing in learning. And there are people who take MOOCs, and I have done this, that are not in my language, so that I can learn the language in a subject I understand and practice with native speakers. And so there may be some really powerful lessons in that we can take back into language learning, which was not why the MOOCs were built, but the language learning potential of them is actually very, very strong, and the desire of people to translate materials from one language to another. So it's worth thinking about MOOCs, not in this question of whether they make money in companies and all that, but actually their power for language learning. But I am interested in your view about the extent to which intelligence can be brought into the automated process, because I think that's actually quite important.
Well, thanks for your comment and your question. I agree, and it is true, and we have all experienced that drilling can be tremendously boring. But I think there is drilling and drilling. It's not the same contextualized drilling, where you see that this is connected to what you have just done and it's taking you somewhere. That's not the same as uncontextualized drilling. So in the particular example I was talking about, this eating out online module, the drilling, or the whole module if you want, is not a whole course in itself. So in a way, if you realize, when I'm on I use the public transport, and I see people using their mobiles. And much of what they do is drilling. When you go through your WhatsApp list, see who's written to you or who's not written to you, you are all the time performing the same actions. So like when using mobile devices, people seem to be ready to do some kind of drilling, there's some repetition, etc. So I think if you contextualize it properly, and if you don't abuse, maybe you don't go just too far, and if you present it as practice, as part of a more global course with its face-to-face component, or if it's a MOOC, some other kind of components. I see no particular problem with drilling, whenever it's focused as moving from drilling as the more closed-ended kind of activity, and then moving on to more open-ended kind of activity.
Just a couple of very quick comments. And we're from the Atlas Research Group, which is now called Applying Languages, or Applying Technology to Languages. It used to be called AI for Languages. And we've been down there that road a bit. We've used Bayesian networks, if you like, and we've used ontologies. And the problem we've got then is where you're going to put the intelligence, because it's a bit heavy to go on the client side. You can put it on the server. So we've done a bit of that. And to answer the MOOC thing, that works sometimes, but what often happens is that nobody's actually there to correct the input. So someone will start speaking in Pidgin English, if you like, and they'll end up, of course, speaking in the same Pidgin English, which is just like using Microsoft Word to correct your written English as well. So it's difficult.
I wanted to say something else. Probably no, I'm sure, that the main reason why students get bored with not only new technology but face-to-face learning, teaching, is because they find the course useless. So I think that the most important thing when we have to prepare a course for someone, especially in the environment, the business settings, is to see why they have to learn English, okay? So we offer them new technologies or an app or a general course of A1, B2 level or whatever, and we don't analyze their needs, what they need. So it's not the same English for a secretary than manager, product manager in a company. And sometimes in companies, they find the same course for everyone. Okay, so the secretary is not interested in how to sell a product, but in how to answer the telephone. Okay, so and they get bored. They find it useless, and they don't attend the classes, so they don't use the new technologies for learning. And this is something important that sometimes teachers we forget, to analyze why they want to learn English. So what kind of technologies are we offering? What kind of teacher are we offering? What kind of course are we offering?
Just two very, very quick, I know everyone wants that one. The first one is, most of the research I've been reading about MOOCs suggests that actually they're anything but crowdsourced or anything. Interaction is down below 2% in forums and things like that, and everyone's just going in and doing their own thing on the one side. On the other side, I'm amazed at how the discourse amongst very enlightened educators around MOOCs and around the work of people like Sudhir, Mitra, etc., seems to be heading in the direction where we're all saying it's better than nothing, and I think that people around the world deserve something better than nothing. And it seems to me that now we're saying, well, you know, if we can't get teachers to India, then a computer's better than nothing. But we shouldn't be setting it better than nothing. We should be working on societal changes that get teachers where they're going to go.
To paraphrase the experts, I mean, there are lots of MOOCs, but not all of them are as MOOCish as they could be, do we say? So what I'm saying is that it depends on how well the MOOC is actually developed, and also the roles of the curators and the facilitators. They're there to engage the people. And also just sort of to begin to draw this session to an end, I mean, you might want to ask yourself, if you'll permit me to use a metaphor, I mean, why are painkillers so effective? Why? Well, because we've got a headache, we drop a pill, and that enables us to carry on with our overactivity. Why don't we just go and sit down and meditate for 5 minutes or relax? Because it requires us to make an effort to move away from what we have to do. And I think for our technology to be effective as a language learning device, it has to be something that we can do as part of something we want to do or need to do, not an additional or supplementary activity. I don't know what the colleagues think of that.
Yeah, maybe we should, if we want to discuss about these things, maybe over lunch or something, because people
I think we're all ready for it now. Thank you very much.